Good evening and welcome to this evening's webinar. I have here with me Ian Moody, who will be leading this webinar. Before we start, I'd like to take you through a few important points. The slides and the recording of the webinar will be available for you to download. We will be emailing the links to you within 1 week from today. There will be a post-webinar survey that will pop up at the end. Please do take the time to complete it for us. You can type your questions throughout the session and we will allocate time at the end to address your questions. You may have already read about your presenter today, Ian Moody, but I'd just like to give you a small introduction to him before he comes on. Ian has been one of our senior associates participating in our and delivering very, very successful programs on supply chain, logistics, procurement, and of course has been an active a member of our conferences as well. He works as a lead tutor and assessor for SIPs, both in the GCC and at London University. Over to him now, and I hope you enjoy this webinar. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Sustainability, such a big subject, enormous subject, and so topical at the moment. People are talking about sustainability all the time, particularly in this region. It is very interesting that the way that recently, over the last 2 or 3 years, sustainability has gone onto the agenda. We have a lot of activity within sustainability within the UAE. Of course, we've got world-leading sustainability conferences being run within Qatar. So sustainability is very much on the agenda. I think a lot of people actually misunderstand it. So let's just start briefly with the word sustainability. And what do we mean by sustainable development? In simple terms, most people tend to relate this to the environmental aspect. And whilst that is an element, it's not really what it means. We're talking about sustainable business. We're talking about companies taking actions that give them a maximum time at the point of growth and long-term development, as opposed to moving into the downward curve within their life cycle. The simple point is this: sustainable companies are only achieved if we can gain sustainable inputs. Now, input can mean many things. It might mean materials, it might mean people. It might, of course, mean profit. If we can't gain those things, we're not going to, as a business, be sustainable. So sustainability finds itself sitting on the agenda. If you look at most businesses, we're more and more talking about things like corporate social responsibility. We're talking about the elements that wrap around ethical behavior, ethical trading. This is a reason for it. It's there to give us a competitive advantage. It's there to help us to develop long-term sustainable companies. We need to be careful we don't get wrapped up too far with what is commonly referred to as greenwash. The whole idea that sustainability only relates to the environment and the trees and how green the planet is. It is an element, but it's not what sustainability is really about. So to start with, if you are going to get sustainable development in businesses, it has to be part of strategic long-term decision making. We need to be thinking about how we're going to achieve long-term sustainability for our business. How are we going to keep ourselves at the top of the market? How are we going to do better than our competitors? What do we need to do? So this has to be built in to our long-term strategy. We have to recognize that all sustainable practice are interdependent on other factors. So, for example, the economic climate, whatever's happening in the economy is related to sustainability. We can't treat sustainability without thinking about economic elements. So we think about the economy as a whole, we think about local economies, world economies, and of course we think about our business economy. We think about the impacts on profits of not having sustainability as well as having sustainability. It's not a question of what does it cost us to gain sustainability, it's what it costs us not to gain it is much more important. We talk about the environment, of course we will, and in reality we talk about social well-being. We talk about society as a whole, what we're trying to contribute to society as businesses. There's no doubt that businesses ethically owe a level of responsibility, know the need to give back into society for what they take. All business activities remove from the world 4 key resources. What they do is they take financial resources, they take human resources, they take physical resources, and they take the resource of time. Unless you give back, these resources will no longer be available to you. And the more you take and the less you give, the shorter your time at the top becomes. Another area of sustainability is the idea of participation. Making these things inclusive, making it so that internally within the organization everybody understands it's building an idea of participation into the business culture. Why do we have to do it? But it's more than just that. It's not just participating internally, it's participating externally. It's participating up and downstream of the supply chain. So going upstream, your suppliers upstream of you, how do they react? What are they doing to help you? Are they part of it? Are they on the journey with you or on the journey against you? Secondly, what about your customers? So we can go now downstream of the supply chain. What are your customers doing? What are they demanding? What do they expect? And how much impact can they have upon your business if you don't deliver it? What about when you're not transparent and people can't see what you're doing? So we need to let people know what we're doing, and we need to allow them to check and evaluate what we're doing. And equity. The idea it must be equal. The point is that we need to have equality between generations, between different groups in society. It doesn't matter what race you are, what age you are, what gender you are, where you come in from the world. Sustainability is an equitable function that is designed to put equality where it can. Now, inevitably, there is no such thing as true equality. You can't gain true equality, because if everybody was equal, then you would have no moving forward. You would effectively create what is meant to be a communist state. And communist states, as we know, didn't survive, didn't exist, because you can't have true equality. But you can strive to create equality within society, within groups. Proactive prevention. You need to anticipate where it's going to go wrong. You need to see the risks. You need to minimize the risk. This is a fundamental role of supply chain activity. The fundamental element of supply chain is to be risk managers, is to see what could go wrong and what actions to take before the damage is done. There have been hundreds of high-profile problems within companies, and they've all been supply chain related. It's about understanding what the risk is and then dealing with it before it damages your business, before it makes your business unsustainable, before it makes it so that your business is unable to continue in the market because people don't want to do business with you. So these are the key kind of sustainable development decisions that we have to think about. So as we move forward, we can think about the concerns that people think about. Yeah, these are very much the environmental ones to begin with. They're in no particular order, but pollution, damage, degradation of industrial activity. Okay, pollution we know about. We talk a lot about pollution, and it is real. There's no doubt that pollution is real. And perhaps we can bring that into the same subject of greenhouse gas emissions, reducing the carbon footprint, etc. You can bring those very much into that same area. But what about damage and degradation? What about what industry actually does to the planet we live in? And by carrying out these actions, it means that we no longer have those resources available because we're not using renewable resources and renewable materials. If you simply keep taking out something that cannot be replaced, then you will not have a resource in the future. If you don't have a resource in the future and your business relies on that particular physical resource, then you have no business. So we need to rethink about what we're doing, which tends to lead us into this area, which is actually number 2 on the list, which is the management of waste products. It's known as the 3 R's of waste. It's the idea of reduction, reuse, and recycling. These are also called closed-loop supply chains. The idea that says, if I put out into the environment a product, if I now bring that product back into my business to recycle it and then put it out again as a new product, I'm using the 3 R's. Because I'm reducing the use of materials, I'm reusing them, and recycling them. Okay, it sounds good. It sounds very environmental. But actually, it makes real business sense. If your company spends, say, $1 million on materials that it sends out to the market, and it never sees those materials again, that money has now gone. But if it brings it back and recycles it and saves itself 50% of the cost, it's now added $500,000 to its profit by simply bringing it back. So managing waste is incredibly efficient and is an incredibly good way of increasing profitability. And this is why waste companies, people that specialize in recycling businesses, make enormous profits, unbelievable profits. They're making net profits of 50, 60, 70% return. These are phenomenal profits. Nobody can match it. And because they're getting their feedstock, to use a well-known expression for raw materials, free. They're not paying for it. It's coming back. It's being given to them by the customer. We can look at it when we look at design. How do we design products? Do we design products that are environmentally friendly? Do we design products that minimize the use of non-sustainable materials? Or do we design products with sustainable materials? So imagine you're a manufacturing company making furniture. Do you use wood that comes from the Amazon rainforest, or do you take wood that comes from sustainable forests in Russia? If you use wood that comes from the animal rainforest, the rainforest in the Amazon, those trees have taken 200-300 years to grow. Once you've used it, you can't use it again. Once you've taken the wood, it's going to take 200 to 300 years for it to come back, assuming it does come back. What are you going to do for the next 200 to 300 years? Believe me, your business will not survive. So we need to think about design of products and the materials we use within our products, and we need to think about being more efficient in the way we do it in order to create more environmentally friendly products that are more desirable to consumers, but equally are more desirable because they're more sustainable to us. We can then run around briefly around the ethical issue, and the ethical issues are very, very major. There have been some terrible situations in recent years. One, of course, the most high-profile ones recently has been Amazon. Sorry, I beg your pardon, forgive me, not Amazon. Has actually been Apple. Apple in China, Foxtron situation, where there were very bad ethical practices going on in that factory. Apple decided to insource back into the US and to come out of China. Everybody said it was a crazy thing to do. Everybody said that when they did that, they would automatically increase their costs. They would lose money. Well, okay. Apple said, no, it's not about that. It's about our reputation. We as a business cannot damage our reputation by seeming to be involved with poor treatment of labor. We can't do it. It's too risky. Consumers will not buy from us. They will simply go and buy from somebody else. There's too much choice in the market. We can't risk it. Apple, Green Company, Green Apple, all the rest of it. But actually the interesting point was, 6 months after making the decision to insource back, to reshore, as it's called, Apple's profits were higher than any other company ever have achieved in the history of this planet. And that's interesting. Not just the industry, ever in the history of the world Apple's products grew. Now, there are various reasons for that, but certainly there have been reductions in real cost from not importing from China. Whilst the price went up, the cost went down. We need to understand cost management in supply chain. We need to understand, additionally, building and manufacturing sustainable production capacity. IKEA have been in trouble for this. Outsourcing to major manufacturers, insisting on high levels of production capacity, then not renewing the contracts, which means those companies now no longer exist. The companies simply go out of business. A few years ago, the British retail company Marks & Spencer's came under considerable criticism globally for this extremely bad business practice. And the result of it is today, Marks & Spencer's have a board director, and it's a board director of sustainability. I know the lady very well. It's on the main board of Marks & Spencer's. They cannot behave like this. It put their business at too much risk. Thinking about consumption. How do we use energy? What kind of equipment are we using? What kind of machinery are we buying? Are we using energy? Are we buying machinery that is energy efficient or not energy efficient? Okay, yes, I know. We greenwash the environment. It's not about that. It's simple. You use energy in machines, it costs you more money. Simple example of this is 3 years ago I bought my first diesel car ever. I am what's commonly called a petrol head. I love my cars. I really adore my cars, but I bought a diesel car. And no petrol head would buy a diesel car. Well, maybe. But with the price of fuel in the UK marketplace, it was becoming prohibitive for me to run a petrol car. In buying a diesel car, I saved myself nearly £3,000 in fuel costs alone. £3,000. Now, £3,000 is a lot of money by anybody's standard, and that's what I've just saved myself. Okay. Reuse, recycling, use as much as possible, recycle. Think about the things we recycle and things we don't. How are we using them? Recycling is not a big issue in this country yet. It's not a big issue in this region yet, but it is coming because it's very, very major. You cannot keep digging holes in the desert and burying goods, products you don't want anymore. Recycling is a major issue, but thinking about it and building it into your products is about making good business sense. If you buy cheaper bottles, cheaper plastics, whatever, to put your material in, they're lighter. Lighter things cost less to ship. You don't need so much packaging, etc. Packaging costs a fortune. Ethically sourcing, ethically produced goods. This is related to things like fair trade initiative. Fair trade is a very major issue in the world today. Being ethically sourced, so big organizations do not bully small organizations, do not try to control everything. Using local and small and diverse suppliers wherever possible. Builds value in communities, SMEs, micro businesses, is where the value in the community comes. It does not build. This nation here in the UAE, this region, will not maintain its wealth if it only works with large businesses. It has to build small businesses. That's where the employment comes from. That's where the value of the business comes from. And that's very, very important. That's, of course, part of sustainability. I know it's a problem. I recognize it's a problem. But if we don't take action, it will always be a problem. And then the problem becomes an excuse. And, of course, consuming, yes. We don't need to consume what we consume. The reality of this world that we live in today is that we can't feed the people on this planet. But so many of us throw literally tons and tons of food in the bin every year. There's something extremely wrong, actually almost, well, we'll call it immoral, because it is. It doesn't make sense. But why keep producing stuff that nobody wants? Someone's got to pay for it. If you go to a restaurant, they produce more food than you want to eat, that food goes in the bin, you pay for it in the price of your meal. It's that simple. Four main aims of sustainable procurement: to minimise negative impacts of goods and works and services throughout the life cycle. To understand life cycle modelling, to understand the real cost of buying things, not the price, the cost. To minimise demand for non-renewable resources. To ensure fair contract prices and terms are applied and respected throughout the supply chain. To promote diversity and equality throughout the supply chain. The four areas where procurement can impact. Okay, this sounds great, it's very real. Remember this, it's procurement and supply chain activity that put the input into the organisation. If we don't input bad practice, we won't get bad practice out. And if that bad practice doesn't come out, it will not then be available to consumers to buy. If all consumers are being supplied with better quality products, better sustainable products, more sustainable aspects, they will buy them because that's what's available to them. If the other things are not available, they simply won't have them to buy. Somebody has to take the lead. Somebody has to take control. And guess what? The reality is it's a function of procurement. So how does procurement work? We tend to talk about something known as triple bottom line reporting, TBL. Historically, organizations only considered economic value, they only considered the aspects of profit. And they said that procurement can do this by adding value for money, through helping effective investment appraisal and capital purchasing, through cost management, budget control, by adding value to ethical trading. Yeah, it can do these things to create more profit. But not at the expense of the other things. What about the environmental value? What about the planet? Procurement comes along and starts to say, we're procurement people. We are proactive, we're not reactive. We input into design and specifications. We try to create greener products and greener services. We try to source greener materials. We reduce waste. We look at sourcing cycles and life cycles. We manage logistics in the form of logistical delivery logistics to minimize waste. That tends to mean that we don't import products over such large distances. We stop working globally to the extent we are, and we create local supply chains. And by creating local supply chains, we improve the business, the lifestyle of our own nation. What's the point of adding money and jobs into China when we don't have jobs here? It doesn't make sense. It's illogical. It makes zero sense. You ship something from China to here, they're going to add between 15 and 20% for shipping costs. If you do it here, the shipping costs are gone. You save money, so you've added to profit. And people. Encouraging diversity. Monitoring supply practices. This is when life gets very interesting, because this all sounds really good, but what about the fact that we've got laws controlling these things? What about the fact that we have a thing called the United Nations? And what about the United Nations and the UN rulings on sustainability? What about the fact that all member states of the UN signed up and agreed to work with the UN and the International Labour Organization, and to follow the rules and procedures as laid down by the International Labour Organization, the ILO? Most people aren't doing it, but they've agreed to do it. What about things like SA 8000, which very few people have heard of, but it's the international standard for fair trading and sustainability within markets? What about systems such as the lines laid down through UNICEF and fair trade organizations? The problem at the moment is we have enormous amounts of global legislation, guidelines, and most people aren't applying them. But if we're not careful, they're going to get forced on us. And the penalties that we will pay for not applying them will far outweigh the cost savings we get from trying to cheat the system. They are real, they are really there. We need to think about this area of TBL. Virtually every major organization in the world today, when they talk about their business, they've got these big areas of CSR and TBL. And they report it, they discuss it, they tell you what they're going to do. And no more such than the energy companies, especially the oil companies. That's why Chevron today is Chevron Human Energy, no longer Chevron Oil. That's why BP have a lovely flower on their logo. People are saying, hey guys, we've got to convince the world that we're doing more. We are putting back. We're doing something beyond simply taking out this resource at the expense of everything else. Think about the energy companies in a slightly different way. Think about the oil industry. The oil industry itself, much to everyone's surprise, is only no more, say 2 to 3% of the world economy. That's all. Regionally here it's more, but worldwide 2 to 3%. It's also a very small employer. For what it does and what it achieves in terms of profitability, it's actually a tiny employer. It does not employ a lot of people. So, if we're to improve the world economies, those companies have got to put back. They've got to look at other things, and they're all investigating other things now. They're all looking elsewhere. If you look at the UAE alone, look at government investment in recent years. Has it been in oil, or has it been in something else? Something else. Even in the terms of energy, has it been in oil? No, it's been in nuclear. Green, nuclear. Interesting. Okay, we move forward. Environmental purchasing, looking at exploitation, over-exploiting, damage to scarce resources, addressing climate change. Climate change. Climate change is always in the news. Everyone talks about climate change all the time. It seems that we are living in this fear that the planet's going to explode or go into some fiery ball tomorrow because of climate change. That's what we call greenwash. No, it's not right. But what is true is we have an ever-increasing population. And what is true is we're burning more and more carbon fuels. And what is true is that we have damaged the climate in that process. Now, it may be that the climate on this planet is currently going through one of its cyclical processes, which can be traced back by geologists going millions of years back. But the problem is, will it actually repair itself this time? Or have we done so much damage that it can't repair? It won't get the opportunity to repair. The simple fact is we don't know. It's only 300 years ago the Industrial Revolution started. We've not been through a major climate change since 1500. The last major climate change was about 1500. So 1730, 1735, Industrial Revolution. It's too soon to know. And actually, if you look at the reality of that, it wasn't until 100 years after that the Industrial Revolution really took hold, and we started to do things when mass production began and certain techniques started to come in, big factories, all the rest of it. 1830s onwards was when it changed. So we haven't had 200 years yet. It's not there. We don't know. We simply don't know. And the risk is there. Okay, does it matter to you? Does it matter to me? Well, me, I'm 59. Maybe not. I'll be dead. But I'm not leaving that legacy to my children or my grandchildren. We need to do things. And it is about green inputs. And I don't personally want to be involved with a business that can be seen to be unethical, to not care. Because if it doesn't care about its suppliers, if it doesn't care about its customers, guys, it doesn't care about you. Do you want to work for a company that don't care? You need to ask that question. I don't suggest anyone should be resigning from the company, but I am suggesting that as responsible risk managers, which is what supply chain people are, you need to be aware of these things, and you need to be thinking about them in detail. So, elements of responsible purchasing, building good relationships with suppliers. Stop bullying suppliers, don't bully suppliers. Suppliers, no supplier, no business. No input, no output. It's not difficult. Using good communication systems, creating sustainable prices so prices don't go up, down, all over the place. They remain at good levels into the future. To respect human and labour rights, to support small-scale producers and home workers. This is all about, certainly ethical trading, is about fair trade initiatives, working with smaller producers, etc. All these initiatives that are running around globally, it's important. Business, environment, country, national wealth does not come from large corporations. It comes from smaller organisations. It's vital. If you want to continue to get good quality supplies, you have to build small-scale producers. It will not happen otherwise. Economic aspects behind sustainability. If you're going to do sustainability and it's going to make sense, there has to be a business case. Because otherwise, all of this just becomes words. There has to be a result. They have to use an encouragement of uses of better and efficient goods and services in the process. You have to encourage purchasers who evaluate cost performance and value of a whole life contracts. You have to encourage purchasers to pursue elimination of waste throughout the supply chain. You have to recognize the need to drive job creation, to develop new markets, and recognize that sustainable markets and sustainable supply chains are important. One of the key and most important things is pay your suppliers on time if you want good suppliers. If you don't want good suppliers, pay them late. If you want bad suppliers, what you will get is bad quality. And if you get bad quality, you will get unhappy customers. And if you get unhappy customers, you get an unsustainable business because they will not buy from you. You will go out of business very quickly. So if you're thinking about how to do this, number one is take care of your supply chain. No supply chain, no business. It's that simple. There is always somebody who will supply you cheaper. Always. Doesn't matter what you do, there's always someone who will supply you for less money. But the question is, at what cost? What is it going to cost you to buy cheap supplies? And how much is it going to damage your business? So you need to create a business case that justifies these things in terms of profit. The initiatives that you pull up for sustainability will vary business by business. So you're going to look at the values, the markets, the transparency, the life cycle, the partnerships, and the levels of governance your business needs to adopt. The key drivers. Then, beyond that, you have to be realistic. What focus these things? I think that the main ones here are stakeholder pressures. We can look at all of the others, but stakeholder pressures. But it depends if you understand stakeholders and who stakeholders are. Because stakeholders are anybody who has an interest in an organization. Stakeholders are defined as individuals or groups of individuals who depend upon the organization and who in turn the business becomes to depend upon. Anybody. So that's the employees in the company, it's the shareholders, it's the suppliers, it's the customers, it's the government, it's the public, it's the press, it's the media. If you do things in your business that the media doesn't like, they will report it. And they will report it very, very quickly. And they will damage your reputation for you. And when they do that, it will take you millions and millions and millions to get it back, assuming you ever get the chance to get it back. If you think about it, when BP had their problems in the Bay of Mexico, Chevron said thank you. Shell said thank you, because Shell, Chevron and the rest of the big oil companies could not have bought that kind of emotion. Now BP nearly lost the business. First time ever in the history of BP, they made a loss. The reality is the press got hold of it and they went out for BP. And BP couldn't stop it. And serious damage, serious risk to the long-term future of any business. We then have growing market pressures, government pressures, international pressures, law, regulations, frameworks, initiatives, growing all the time. If we don't focus on sustainability, we're going to be in real trouble. So, the big internal things that might go on, well, most companies talk about sustainability. They set mission statements, value statements. They write about, they talk about CSR. They talk about management visionaries. They talk about accountability. They talk about everything on this slide. They write it into their company profiles. They report on it in their company reports. The board of directors scream and yell and shout how wonderful they are. But does the company do it? And there is the big question. Does the company do it? Now, it works in simple stages. You can work this way. You can react or you can proact. At the very far end of reaction, you simply don't comply, you don't compare. As you move up through your thinking, you get to the point when you simply comply with the regulatory pressures. As you start to move towards being proactive, you go beyond compliance and you start to think about regulatory threats and PR and all those other things that might worry you. And then you integrate it into your business. So you see, what does sustainability give me as a risk opportunity, a business opportunity? How does it make it better? How does it help me to manage my risk? And as you go further, you can align sustainability with your core values to create a mission that says this business will follow sustainability because it makes us better into the future, because it protects our market, because it protects our brand, because it protects our business position, and yes, it protects our profits. And it's that you should be thinking about. How do I go from simply not caring to caring? And once I start to care about sustainability, forget greenwash, forget the environment. Why am I doing it? What am I going to look at? I do it because it makes business sense. If you do that, the result is, yes, you can be environmentally friendly. Yes, you can be people friendly, but it has to make business sense to do it. But like all things, it's an investment. And all investments take time to return. But if you don't make investments, if you don't invest in the future, there will be no future. It's as simple as that. Now, it's not me saying that, it's just obvious. If you don't make investment into the future, there will be no future. If we don't study the mistakes of the past, we're doomed to make the same mistakes in the future. If we don't look at what people have done wrong, we too will be doing that in the future. And we too will be sitting in that wonderful graveyard called good intentions. We have to learn from it. We have to develop. We have to become world-class companies. And it's only by moving from reactive to proactive that we can achieve that. The main benefits, therefore, complying, reputation, brand proposition, differentiation, competitive advantage, better workforces, supply continuity, minimization of failure costs, cost management efficiency. It's a great list, shareholder value. When you read that list, you start thinking, well, if those are the real benefits, why aren't everybody doing it? Because surely those benefits are so important. Every company needs shareholder value. Every shareholder makes an investment in a business because it gives value. So every company wants shareholder value. And the rest that goes on to say, it works with it. So, lastly, the business case. The things that we look at when we think about a sustainability program and the things that it's going to give us in additional revenue and cost us in cost. Give us economic business value. So when you look at this and you're writing a business report, usually people will start with reputation. Brand strength and value is incredibly important because reputation and a good reputation in the business increases the share price of that business. And as the share price increases, the company does better for longer. But also reputation increases sales, revenue from sales. And as it increases sales, profits go up. What's capital? It increases cash flow. And that increases share price. And that also gives higher dividends to shareholders. So shareholders get a benefit immediately of better reputation. It's getting to a point now where many shareholder investors will not invest in businesses with bad reputations. The reputation means everything. Innovation, thinking differently, thinking out of the box, thinking about adjusting and addressing sustainability trends, looking at the trends, being proactive, not reactive, meeting customer and consumer needs, makes you more competitive, makes you more desirable, allows you to enter into new markets that you haven't entered before, allows you to get product licenses you've never had before, allows you to supply in different countries you've never been before, creates value for your brand. Employee relations, you get better people working harder, better morale, better safety, less waste, less risk, increases productivity. Productivity increase, costs go down, profits go up. You don't lose people. People work for the company for longer. They don't take sick days because of sustainability. It's a factor. People want to work for nice businesses. They don't want to work for evil companies that are seen to be evil or in the press every day about how bad they are. They don't want it. We care. So we will work harder, productivity will go up, that reduces the relation of costs go down, profits go up, dividends go up, share price goes up, owners of the company more happy. Governments and community burdens, the same thing. Governments are putting more and more burdens on business. How much more do we want? How much more government pressure do we want as businesses to tell us what to do in our companies? But if we don't take action, there will be simply more and more and more because the governments are being controlled from a world economy. And people like the WTO and the UN are having major impacts on governments around the world, as I've already said. Waste prevention, energy, efficiency, supply chain costs, meeting commitments, better business practices. These are all things you need to look at under sustainability. Because if you can reduce the cost of your supply chain, you can save money. If you can save money and avoid cost, you can increase profits. That doesn't mean to say you cut the price, it means you save the cost in the supply chain. The best way to save costs in the supply chain is to stop all this global sourcing, and it's to develop local suppliers. The history of meeting commitments and reputation and ethical investment and governance and, well, this is so obvious. In the last recession, many businesses, especially banks as we know, came under considerable criticism for their risk management. They were bailed out by governments around the world. The net result of that is it was almost impossible for anyone to borrow money. And if they wanted to borrow money, what happened? The interest rates were so high that the cost of capital increased cost to the business to such a point that every business stopped investing. And many businesses simply went out of business because of the fact that we had businesses not behaving ethically. And it really frightened people. so it removes investor appeal, etc., etc. And then, of course, the legality. Well, as I say, legality is a cost for every business. It's growing. Get these things right, you increase profits, you'll increase dividends, you'll increase share price, and everybody will be happy. Don't misunderstand the importance of sustainability. Don't misunderstand the importance of looking at it in balance, the balance between people, planet, and profit, or profit, planet, and people, and I don't care which order you use. But look at all three. You're creating a balance for long-term, sustainable businesses, not simply for the sake of the environment. That is not what the sustainability agenda is about from a supply chain. It's an element, but it's not the whole story. We need to think all pictures, all areas, and create a balanced view for the sake of our long-term success of our company. In reality, simply look at the world-leading companies. Look at the top 100, 200, 300 companies in the world, and look at the actions they are taking. Pick any major business you like, go to the internet, enter their corporate website, and type in sustainability and see what happens. And believe me, they all are investing large sums of money, enormous sums of money, into sustainability. Supply chain thinking has changed. We no longer treat our suppliers as second-class citizens. We treat our suppliers as our partners, as collaborative people. Learn how to work with suppliers, but please select the right suppliers who are going to be able to work with you, not the ones who are going to work against you. Get these things right, and it's a long-term future for all of us. Get it wrong, we're in trouble. Big, big trouble. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending this webinar. I hope I've got you thinking about sustainability. There are many, many issues wrapped up into this. This is not a simple one. Within SIPS, we run a whole exam on the subject of sustainability at level 5. It's a big subject. It's incredibly important within supply chain. This was just a taster to get you thinking about the subject. So I thank you all for your time, and goodbye. Thank you.